All right, here we go. Okay. All right, guys. So, welcome back for another week of Willie Creamin's Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Good to have you guys here. Thanks for tuning in. We got some good vibes rolling on this Sunday. We'll kick things off with fantasy, right? Let's get going on this. So, first things first. We've got I'm still alive in Guillotine League, which is a good thing. Definitely a little bit of a rough week, but we're still alive. And I won in two of my leagues last week. Lost in one, so I'm doing all right. I feel like in those. As you can see, I've been hitting waivers really hard, and I told you guys that last week. You got to be able to do that. Leagues are definitely lost in the draft. They're not won in the draft, but you could definitely lose them. But you've got to, it's a consistent thing throughout the season. You got to be able to go in and hit those waiver wires hard. That's where the gems are. Injuries are going to happen. This year, it definitely hit a lot harder. But I've been hitting them hard, and I've been scooping up guys where others miss. And as I mentioned, like you gotta stay aggressive. It's a season-long thing, so you got to stay aggressive every week. I was a few weeks ago. I got Kareem Hunt off the waiver wire in almost every single one of my leagues. Actually, all four leagues I was able to snag him in a week before. As soon as I heard he was signed on the practice squad, we knew what was good. So, but there's even guys that I snagged this week out there. Guys that I was looking at like Juju, Colby Parkinson, Tank Bigsby. Yeah, Bigsby, he's kind of put up a dud today so far in the game, but these are guys that are out there, right? And still in one of my leagues today, I was looking at some of the injuries. I had to sit a guy, and Juju was there. I'm like, what the fuck are people doing? Like, they're asleep at the wheel. So, guys are out there. You just got to be aggressive for it. So, let's take a look at these because these are some guys that I told you that would pop last week. Let's take a look and see how we did on that. So, first one, Jaden Daniels. Listen, he finished as the QB 12. But still had a really nice day in terms of production. Like, if not for guys like Lamar and Joe Burrow just absolutely destroying fantasy last week, he would have been higher on that. But he definitely did well. Kareem Hunt, listen, he absolute dog, right? Finished his running back number 5 on the week. But the good news was him getting the 27 carries. I think he silenced a lot of critics with that, and was able to show them, hey, listen, guys, I'm here to stay. DK Metcalf, man, he dropped a fucking dud, and that's just too bad. Like he had a really nice matchup against the Giants too. I'm just not sure what happened there. Like some games they just don't pop. Brian Thomas, listen, he finishes the wide receiver 8. He hasn't had that great of a day today in London, but really nice play and just been a good rookie this year in terms of production. And then my man Travis Kelce, right? I told you guys he was going to have the best game of the season, and he did. So he finished as tight end 5 on the week. But we should see more of him. I'm not saying more of that production, but more of him going forward into further weeks. So what's up, Ben Carey? Welcome to the chat, bro. All right. Okay, so let's dive into some of these buys, right? We got the Dolphins, Vikings, Rams, and Chiefs. Listen, there are some really solid offensive playmakers on these teams. They're going to be on bye this week. And so there's going to be a lot of holes in a lot of lineups. But this is a week that if you really hit that waiver wire hard, you may be able to reap some benefits of guys that you picked up and really take advantage, beat some teams that really loaded up on these guys this year. So let's dive into my picks for the week, right? QB start of the week. Now, Baker Mayfield. Now, 2 years ago, people be laughing at this and thinking it's funny, but Baker was a good quarterback last year in terms of fantasy, and he's continued to be one this year. Other than, I think, one game this year, he's been real solid. And I just love this matchup against a New Orleans team that's trotting out a rookie QB in Spencer Rattler, right? So Tampa Bay's defense, listen, they should give Baker a ton of opportunity this week. And not to mention, like, they give up at least 250 plus yards through the air every single week. So Baker's going to absolutely shred this secondary. Not to mention how pissed off he was that they ended up not winning that game last week against Atlanta. So really see him coming back firing this week. This offense should be primed and ready to go, and see him really letting loose. Really like this pick this week. Next one, one of my running backs of the start of the week, Josh Jacobs here, right, against Arizona. Now, Listen, this one may be one that hurts me this week because I'm playing against him in 2 leagues, but the numbers are just too good, and the matchup's just too good for it. So, and Arizona, listen, they're giving up a metric fuck ton of yards on the ground, and that just bodes well for a guy that is definitely the lone workhorse on his team. Jacobs could be in line for 25 plus carries, and like against a team that really can't stop water from running, I think he's got a great shot to really put up some good points this week. He's averaging 80 yards per game right now on the ground, which, I know that's not great. But look for him to drive up that average this week, and I really think he's going to have a chance to do that. I'd honestly be pretty shocked if he didn't finish over 125 yards and with at least one score on the week. And he's only done that once this year, and that was against my Colts, but they just have a porous defense as well, and that's what happens when you get a good running back in there. So let's move on. Next one, Bijan Robinson, right? So he's going to be playing against Carolina, and like this was the pick that fucked me last year in Guillotine because I was like, oh, I got Bijan off the waivers because my team was stacked last year in Guillotine, and I'm like, oh, he's playing against Carolina. Yeah, it's in the rain, but they're going to run the ball a ton, and he ended with like 10 yards on the day total. And it just sucked. But I'm picking Bijan this week against Carolina because the matchup's just too good to pass up. And I really look for the Falcons, like, who love to run the ball, to get back to running the ball. Yeah, I know Cousins threw for 500 yards last week, but I really expect them to get back to running and being physical up front. That bodes really well for Bijan. And really, he's only had one solid game this year. That was the game against Philly. But I seriously look for him to ink his first 100-yard game of the season. And I know he had this hammy thing, but like, listen, he's good to go. Carolina, they've been giving up a ton of yards on the ground, more than 100 in almost every game this year except Las Vegas. And that was honestly because they were so far ahead in that game. Vegas had to change the game script in order to be able to try to compete. And Carolina won that game. So I really think teams that commit to running the ball and can get out to a decent lead, they can run all day against this team. And I just think you got to start them with confidence this week. And Carolina's not going to be able to hang with this offense. So, all right, let's move on now. We got Tank Dell, and they're playing against New England this week. I love the matchup against a secondary that is just not playing according to Patriots standards, right? Like, we've seen the news about what's going on with that secondary. They got some issues going on there. So Tank Dell, listen, unfortunately, he's just been waiting in line, and he's waiting his turn. This is going to be the week that it's it. Unfortunately, it took Nico Collins hitting IR for him to kind of elevate himself, but listen, he's going to help everyone remember this week exactly what he brought to this team last year. And I really think it's going to show a lot about what him and Stroud are able to do. They're going to pick apart this Patriot defense. And if we don't see double-digit targets for Tank Dell, I'd be very surprised. I really would. If you've been patiently waiting this out, because it's been a brutal season so far in fantasy for Tank Dell, but if you've been patient, listen, this week is it. And I'd put him down for at least 7 catches, and let's just say, let's get a little Brody, right? Say 130 yards. We'll do that. All right? Put Willie down for it. All right, next one we got up, Marvin Harrison Jr. against Green Bay. And listen, it's been feast or famine for Harrison Jr. this year, which can be frustrating for fantasy managers. And like, a lot of dudes went all in on him, drafting him at the end of the first, beginning of the second. I faded him real hard in drafts this year. There were just better targets around where I was picking, and I felt like I was never in a position to really have to make a decision to get him. I just wasn't going to take him at the top of drafts, and I really didn't want to take him on the way back down. But just remember, like with most rookies, it takes time to develop. It really does. Now, I know there's some guys that have really come in this year and done very well. You're looking at like Neighbors and Thomas Jr. They both, I mean, I mentioned Thomas Jr. before, but Neighbors and Thomas Jr. they've been killing it this year for their teams. But the difference between them and Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't necessarily like an ability, but opportunity on their team, right? Like, they're likely the top targets on their team. Maybe Thomas Jr. isn't with Evan Engram back, but Neighbors is the unquestioned playmaker for the Giants. And, you look at that, they've had a ton of opportunity to be able to produce this year because of that. Harrison Jr., listen, he may evolve into that top option on his team because I think he can be that dude. But Arizona likes to run the ball, and McBride's a really reliable target for Kyler, something that they really can't be. He's his safety blanket, so he's going to go to him. But I don't think they're in that big of a rush for Harrison Jr. to be that guy yet or to be too perfect. I don't know. I don't think Harrison Jr. has been disappointing. I just think people's expectations need to be tempered a little bit. I think they were simply just too high. Like, people were expecting Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill type numbers, and he just wasn't going to put that up at the beginning of the season. Now, granted, he's got 4 touchdowns this year, which looks really good, and I get that piece of it, but I think the drafters of him wanted more of, okay, I want him getting 12 targets a game. I want him getting 10 catches and 150 yards each week. And they just haven't had that from him. So why do I like this matchup today with him? Listen, Green Bay, they're giving up loads of yardage through the air. And a lot of points in fantasy to the wide receiver position. So, as I mentioned before, Jacobs is going to have himself a day against Arizona. I really think this bodes well for Marvin Harrison Jr. because Arizona's going to be behind. They're going to have to throw the ball. And who are they going to get it to? It's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. So, obviously, the easy choice here is Trey McBride. But I think Harrison's going to be the one that has the major impact on the day. He's going to be the benefactor of them throwing from behind. And you could pencil him in for just short of 100 yards and maybe a touchdown or 2 because he's been known to do that. So, all right, tight end of the week. Listen, I got Brock Bowers against Pittsburgh this week. And listen, he really was the steal of the draft this year in fantasy. You could have gotten him in the 9th, 10th round, which was, just awesome. But he's definitely a league winner for a lot of people. It just, with Devontae Adams out, Jacoby Myers doubtful, it looks like it's really just him and Trey Tucker. And I mean, it doesn't matter that Gardner Minshew's getting benched in favor of Aiden O'Connell. I really think Bowers should be in line for at least 10 targets this week. Just with how physical he is and how he's able to catch the ball and make plays after it, I think you got to put the ball in his hands. And, you look at his games this year, right? Out of the 5 games, 3 of them he's delivered this year. It just shows his superior athleticism. It just makes you kind of forget that he's a tight end. The way he plays the game, it really looks like a wide receiver out there. In terms of why I like this matchup, man, the Pittsburgh D just gave up 98 yards to the tight ends from Dallas, right? Bowers is going to absolutely shred that. So I think you book him in for at least 100 yards this week and possibly a touchdown. I don't know how brutal it's going to be playing against Pittsburgh and trying to get those touchdowns, but I really think you got a good shot of him at least getting 100 yards this week and quite a few receptions, which should be nice in those PPR leagues. So, guys, that's about it for this week. I really appreciate all the support. I really do. Every week it's a lot of fun. We just we try to enjoy it. So I'll be back next week with any questions you have for your squads. But guys, thanks for showing up. I appreciate the support and keep it real. Good vibes this week, guys. Peace.